Good morning, and welcome to our webinar, Logistics Hiccups During Peak Seasons and How to Avoid Them. This is the first webinar in a series dedicated to the cross-section of e-commerce and logistics. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Nina. I'm a senior account manager at Warehousing One, and I have about 10 years of experience working in sales. I joined Warehousing One last spring. For me, this is the first time working in the logistics industry. This might seem like a short time. However, the first time I got in touch firsthand with logistics was about 10 years ago when I was working on a charity project which included organizing toys in a huge warehouse in Manchester in England. That gave me a first impression on how to run logistics, but I had no idea at the time that this was going to be my field eventually. So before I started at Warehousing One, I worked for a catering company, and I think everyone can appreciate how much logistical efforts lie behind organizing food to be produced, stored, transported, and then presented beautifully. And then during Christmas time, all companies throw their Christmas and end of the year parties that can really stretch the resources to the limits. And these peaks are a challenge in every industry, but especially in logistics, which is why we're here together today. And I'm very excited to be hosting this webinar. So today we are talking about many of the various challenges that arise during the last 6 to 8 weeks of each year. For e-commerce players like yourselves, there is hardly a more important time of the year. Order volumes are skyrocketing. And speaking about logistics, this is where your setup and your processes are put to the test. Solid systems prevail, unreliable systems are exposed and lead to chaos and grumpy customers. It is still early in the year. While it may be too late to wish all of you a Happy New Year, I want to say that I sincerely hope that the peak season around Christmas was successful for your business and everything ran smoothly. But given the topic of this webinar and the fact that you are attending, I will assume we have a few participants here that experienced some challenges with inventory, system integrations, or e-commerce logistics. So the goal of today's webinar is to provide you with some simple but tested tricks to make sure that you are well prepared to tackle the next peak season without too many hiccups. So maybe to get things rolling here and get an overview of where you are at, let us do 2 quick polls. First, let's talk about the order volumes you received in November and December. Please tell us what your order volume in Q4 last year was like. Let's see, the first answers are coming in. I'm going to give you a few more seconds. Yeah, so there were quite a few that said there was more than expected, either just quite a bit or just a bit more. That seems to be the majority. Trend increasing. No one said less than expected so far, which was to be expected, but also really good. Okay, great. I think it's safe to say that in general, you guys have had higher volume order than expected. So let's move on to the next question. To get a feel for the general mood around this year's Christmas season, we would like you to rate the performance of your logistics setup during the Black Friday and Christmas peaks in 2022, with 1 meaning that it ended in a complete disaster and 5 meaning everything went perfectly and you don't even know why you're here. Let's see. Okay, quite okay. Few hiccups. All right. Pretty nice. No one's had a complete disaster so far. That's great. But also no one said it went absolutely perfectly. Quite okay. Yeah. So as you can see, there were some for whom it went okay, for some not really great. Yeah, to be honest, this is the outcome I more or less expected. Often peak seasons can be a mixed bag. So some setups hold up, but most do show weaknesses. And I think after this webinar, or at least I hope you will all have some tools to reevaluate and improve your logistics setup ahead of the next peak season. So let's continue or actually start properly. So now that we got an initial general idea about your experience of last year's peak season, let's get to the main part of today's webinar. I will give you an idea of what we are going to cover today. First, we're talking about inventory management and what constitutes good housekeeping. Then we will discuss how to plan capacity for the peak season. Next, we're focusing on the importance of the technical setup and the integration of your shop system with your warehouse management system. And last but not least, after sales and returns and how to set up scalable processes to deal with what comes after the peak. Before we start right into the main part, I would like to say, feel free to enter all the questions that you have into the question section at the bottom right of the webinar window. You can place your questions there during the webinar whenever you want, and at a later point, I will then answer all of your questions as good as possible. All right, so let's get starting with inventory. Keeping inventory is one of the most basic, but also one of the most important aspects of any retail business. Simply put, with good inventory management, you make sure that you have enough of the items that sell well, not too many of the items that don't sell, and perhaps most importantly, that your stock levels in your systems match those in the warehouse. But first, I want to hear from you again. Looking back at last Christmas peak season, did you encounter inventory problems like stockouts or missing stock information this Christmas? I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer the question. Yeah, there were some, mixed. Some expected, some had less inventory problems than expected, which is really good. Seems to be good average. Quite a few, all right. Yeah, mixed, okay. So quite a few of you showed that they had inventory problems. Some of you did well, it's good. So let's dive right in and see where we can give you some tips how to set up your inventory for the future. So why is inventory management important? Good inventory management prevents missed sales because of stockouts, and it avoids too many shelf warmers, which are products that don't sell well. And it keeps customers from being disappointed by order cancellations due to false stock information in your online shop, and avoids stockouts in general. So let's talk about how to prepare your inventory the right way. First, you need to check general stock levels and make sure the inventory in stock is accurately reflected in your system. Do that well ahead of the peak season. And while you're at it, check if there is a product of which you have very little quantities left in the warehouse and you should stock up on. Make sure you have enough time to stock up before supply chains get more unreliable towards the end of the year. Next, you should check for high performers. Analyze any data you have from previous years and see how your products performed. You should stock up on anything that flies off the shelves around Christmas time. And you should do that with plenty of time to spare. The closer it gets to Christmas, the more delivery time you will have to factor in for procurement. I think we all know this pain. And also check for shelf warmers. Shelf warmers are once again products that just won't sell and have been in the warehouse for ages potentially. They don't bring revenue and instead create additional costs for storage space. Think about marking down these products to lower inventory levels. And one last tip, if you are using branded packaging, whilst checking the inventory of your products, check if you have enough packing materials well before heading into the peak. And all of these tips will ensure that you have good housekeeping in place before heading into the next peak season. Let's continue with capacity. In logistics, it's all about capacity management. You want to have enough capacity to fulfill orders quickly, but you don't want to have too much idle capacity creating unnecessary cost. In dealing with capacity planning ahead of the peak season, it makes a huge difference if you are fulfilling online orders in your own facility or if you are using an external provider who is potentially more flexible regarding different kinds of capacities. And if you are indeed using an external provider, it makes a difference if you're working with a single logistics company or if you're working with using a network solution. The outcomes of poor capacity planning ahead of the Black Friday and Christmas peak can be severe. Should you underestimate the required capacity, the speed and accuracy of your fulfillment will suffer. This means that your error rate will go up and the time between order and shipping will increase. Both will lead to unhappy customers that will likely not order with you again. So the big question is, what can you do to make sure your customers' happiness is not affected by poor capacity planning? First, make use of data. Every year, you collect data about your orders. Use the data from previous Christmas sales to make informed decisions about the upcoming peak season. If your business has been growing year on year, include this growth rate into your calculation to estimate this year's order numbers. Use real-time data during the peak season to adjust capacities if needed. If the actual order numbers already trump all over your calculations in early November, it makes sense to adjust quickly. This also means you need to have a logistics setup that is agile enough to react flexibly to change, and that your systems allow data transparency and real-time insights for you and your logistics team. Keep an eye on error rates and shipping times and action if you see cause for concern. Once you know what to expect, discuss the upcoming peak season with your logistics provider or with your logistics manager if you handle logistics in-house. Communicate the estimated daily order volume. They will take care of managing the staff capacities as well as the last mile delivery services. Because communication is so obvious, it is easy to lose sight of it, which is why we decided to stress the importance of it here once more. The next point up is the technical setup, and with it, the next poll. Please tell us what are technical problems in your logistics setup that you have encountered in the past. There are a few different options. Feel free to choose more than one if they apply to you. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to read through them. Every answer has got a tick so far. Quite some manual effort, some stockouts, checking IDs that were not transmitted automatically. Yeah. So it's quite interesting here that it's the point about the manual effort that seems to have been the most common problem, and then the other points about stockouts, tracking IDs, returns management, warehousing, warehouse management system following. So let's jump more into the topic and see if our tips can provide you from having these issues again. Capacity planning is all about having the right data transparency, and getting this transparency is only possible if you have the right technical setup. This will allow you to check the performance of your peak season sales with real-time data, react immediately to problems in your logistics, and avoid some of the most common operational hiccups. So what does a solid technical setup include? First, you need to ensure a clean data setup on the shop system side. This is the base for a functioning logistics setup. To do so, you need to check, is all important product data filled, like SKUs, etc.? Is the data cleaned? This means, for example, making sure there are no duplicates. And the major step is the integration of shop system and warehouse management system to enable real-time data flow. This can be tricky depending on the setup you used for your logistics. Not all systems are compatible with one another. So the shop system integration can be especially difficult if your logistics provider uses legacy or on-premise solutions. If that's the case, it might be best to look for a new provider altogether, since a lack of data transparency can significantly hurt the performance of your fulfillment, particularly during peaks. Another key factor is the ability to receive end-to-end data insights of the whole fulfillment process via a personalized dashboard. Important insights include, but are not limited to, stock levels, fulfillment status of your orders, and status of returns. A dashboard with these insights will ensure a good overview of what is happening at the warehouse and allow you to act quickly in case of problems. A well-set-up system will offer automated messages, regarding order updates for the end customer via mail or SMS through efficient tracking of fulfillment and shipping status. Automated processes like these increase customer satisfaction because the shopper always knows the status of their order. And lastly, automations for other recurring processes like creating bundles or adding marketing material will lead to a lower error rate, which also increases customer satisfaction. So now let's move on to the next point, the aftermath. So after focusing on the logistics processing during peak phases themselves, we're now coming actually with this to the last part of the webinar, the after sales process. And with that, the next poll, can you please tell me what you think was the hardest part after the peak season? Was it dealing with returns, increased customer demands, or you just don't know what to do with all the money? Returns seem to be the case. And quite a few have earned quite a lot of money. Great. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on. After the order follows a happy customer, right? At least that is the desired outcome, of course, but unfortunately, this is not always the case. During the peak season, especially the Christmas peak, a lot of people shop for the loved ones, and not every gift is a hit. So after Christmas, e-commerce brands usually deal with significantly higher return rates than usual and more customer service demands. After sales returns can get the best of you if not considered. Having a clear and scalable process will save you from an operational nightmare. So how can you set yourself up for success and be well prepared for the aftermath? First, check the scalability of your return process. Are there any steps in your return process that are still manual? Can you, for example, automate more processes like creating return labels or updates on return and refund statuses? To set this up, you need to make sure that the return data is available. Second, check in with your customer service team and evaluate their capacities. Does your customer service have enough capacity to handle the higher demand? Like with the capacity planning for your logistics, use data from previous years to estimate your customer service needs. Are there any parts that are still handled manually that you might be able to automate or solve by providing more information, for example, by creating an FAQ page? Can you provide more data transparency regarding the status of an order? This is by far the most asked questions customers, service staff encounters. If your processes are set up in a way that offer full transparency by default, you can significantly reduce the number of help requests your customer service team receives. If you follow these steps, you will be well prepared for the aftermath. Now, of course, there can be other challenging topics regarding your business, your product, and your audience, but these steps will definitely get you in the right direction. All right, so finishing the peak phase aftermath, we are coming to an end of the formal part for now. I want to thank all of you guys for joining today, and I really hope you had as much fun as I had. So as the last part of this webinar, I will now start answering all the questions you guys already have provided. And if you didn't fill in your questions quite yet, you still have the chance to place them in the questions section at the bottom right of this window. And as a small surprise, I'm very happy to announce that our head of account management, Eike Stötter, joins the session for the Q&A. Eike helps Warehousing One customers to find the right logistics solutions since 2.5 years now, and has already been involved in many successful logistics projects. And together we will try to answer all of your questions as good as possible. Thank you for joining us today, Eike. Hi.
Thanks, Nina. Can you guys hear me? Nina, do you hear me? Am I still on mute? Let me check. Nina, can you hear me?
You seem to be having having some microphone issues. Well, then, whilst you sort that out, I will just start with the first questions. Let's start with the question, when should I start planning for Q4? Well, I would say the best time to actually start preparing is during summer, because that is those months, the summer months tend to be the rather quiet months, which gives you some time to actually prepare and to, very importantly, look at the data that you collected from last year. And after summer, usually the peaks that you might have encountered before that time and the ones that you're preparing for already over or ahead. So I would say summertime is probably the best time to start. And as we said before, it's important to have enough time. So if you start in summer, maybe late summer after your holidays, there should be enough time to actually prepare.
Checking just really quick if you can hear me now.
All right. What should I tackle for first when preparing for Christmas? Very good question. Obviously, when you have enough time, that should give you enough time to tackle all the problems. But I think what to address first, because it is one of the most important topics for sure, is the IT setup, the technical setup. Because as soon as you have a solid setup with your IT, that means that then all the processes kind of follow. So I'd say make sure the integration of the shop system runs smoothly and all the orders are coming in. If you have a dashboard, you can see all the data, you have access to it in real time. And yeah, I'd say this is probably the best point to start with. Let's check in with Eike once again. I can see you, still can't hear either. This is a rather common problem we are facing in our team with the headphones. Okay, thank you very much. The audience can hear Eike, that's great. Thank you for letting me know. Then Eike, feel free to answer the next question.
All right, let me check which one is left. So I think, have we talked about the systems that we're connected to from warehousing one? I don't think we've tackled that one. So right now we're connected to Shopify, WooCommerce, Bilby, and Central, and those are the integrations we're working with at the moment. There's many more planned during the year. We focus on the most popular ones for this year, but many more to come. We're working on a connector to plenty markets at the moment, and I think by Q2, Q3 there will be another few integrations available. I think as Nina is not hearing me, I'll give her a quick heads up in the chat.
Okay, I will continue with the next question. What are the challenges in setting up 3PL and how to gain more customers? So since we're dealing with actually changing from one 3PL to the other, we hear about all the challenges we are facing every day. And one of the big ones is actually, well, one of the obvious ones is getting the products from one warehouse to the other, right? So this is something the company, the 3PL you're changing to, can usually support you with. And then it's once again, the shop system integration. So I would say it's definitely advisable to go through some test orders beforehand. So once you have set up the shop system integration and you have the first products in the new warehouse, it's definitely a good idea to just run a few test orders to make sure all the processes are running before you send out the orders. So those 2 points are definitely challenges they're facing, as well as the communication in the beginning. When you've been with a logistician, a 3PL for quite some time, obviously they know the product. They don't need to check in with you all the time again if there, for example, is a return that is special. They are familiar with the processes, but obviously in the beginning, I need some time for things to be set in place, to get familiar with the product and so on. So I'd say just give it some time in the beginning, but make sure the preparation allows for you to avoid all of the big bangs that you might face potentially. And maybe I want to add to this.
Yes, maybe just to add on this. So completely agree with your points, Nina, even though you don't seem to hear me. So one other thing might be the inbound handling. So inbound seems to be one of the biggest trouble issues, especially in the beginning. So every 3PL usually has a sort of a strict rule how inbounds should arrive, how inbounds are handled, and especially when our clients were doing the logistics in-house, had their own sort of system, maybe their own labeling system, and how things arrive at the warehouse, specifically if they're working with an external producer of the goods. So it's very crucial to align on how goods arrive. So in the beginning of the process, no issues arise. So maybe just to add on that.
I can go on with the next question, which came up. It is, how is the order management working, especially when it comes to different markets with different warehouse locations? So operating in different markets and especially in different warehouse locations is very complex. The more markets you enter, obviously, the more complex it gets. And actually only with a certain size, companies decide to actually use different warehouse locations, because with every additional location, the processes become more complex, since you need to have the order management in various places and then one system to have especially an overview over your stock. So the order management is ideally working through one system that has an overview of all the different markets, inbounds, inventory, outbounds, etc. And the different warehouse locations should then be integrated with it. However, again, that only applies in the most cases to rather really large companies with large order volumes. And it's quite common to have, especially even if you have a few thousand orders per month that are operated from one warehouse. For example, if a company is based in Germany and they have a German provider, a German 3PL, and a warehouse, let's say in Frankfurt, then it's quite common to ship from there even to different countries. And the step to open actually a new warehouse in even a different country is quite a big one, but it should be centralized system-wise. I could feel free to add something or go on to the next question if you like.
I would actually go on to the next one, as I don't have too much to add. So maybe one question from Pavel that came up: are you seeing any new emerging trends or new customer demands from the fulfillment perspective? So what we've definitely seen, and specifically depending now if you're talking about end customers or our customers, which would be shops. We see a shift, especially last season. We were a bit, to be honest, overwhelmed by that. It has always been that there's this particular peak season, there's the pre-Christmas season, but the Black Week, especially last year, all of our clients were a bit overwhelmed by the order purchases, by the purchases, since I have the feeling that the low economy is not specifically driving down demand and orders, but I think it sort of concentrates it on a even tighter space. So I think consumers really want to make a bargain these days, and that's obviously quite a challenge for us, since maybe beforehand the whole season would extend from maybe the Black Week, but then going on and spreading a bit more. Right now it seems to be even more tense and focusing on 1 or 2 weeks. So that's a trend I'm seeing. Then and this goes hand in hand. The obviously one key parameter that our 3PLs always have in mind, and that's of course something that has been going on for quite some time, is the delivery times. So lead times until parcels arrive at the customer. Customers always preferred the orders to be there as fast as possible, but through Amazon Prime, it has become sort of a standard. And if a parcel is delayed, especially in the pre-Christmas season, also due to carriers like DHL not being able to pick up the orders on time, it may happen that the parcels are delayed. And we see that customers have close to zero patience when it comes to this. And what we've seen 3 or 4 years ago, that parcels had some wiggle room to arrive maybe 1 or 2 days late. This is not the case anymore. Clients get way more sensitive, and that's something I'm seeing. As Nina is not here in mix, so I don't think you can add anything to that. So maybe we can move to the next question.
Okay, I will continue with the next question up, which is, how can I reduce my cost when I'm selling in Amazon and Shopify at the same time? And that is also including FBA Amazon. So one point where you could actually reduce the cost when you're using the combination of those two platforms is that you run it actually through the same logistician, or you can also use Amazon FBA through Amazon. So there are 2 different setups that you can use. Obviously, you can some 3PLs are flexible by fulfilling the orders that are coming through Shopify through their warehouse, and then you can also at the same time get the FBA orders fulfilled by Amazon directly. And then the pallets, for example, having them shipped to the Amazon warehouse. It is quite known that Amazon is providing, since they are just huge, they are the leader in the market, aren't they? They can offer the best prices for it. So if it's really about reducing your cost to a minimum, and you manage to apply processes to exactly the requirements that Amazon asks from you, in that regard, it would be advisable, if that is again the goal, to keep the cost down as much as possible, to have this side fulfilled by Amazon directly, and then use the 3PL for the Shopify orders, the ones that can actually comparably offer you the best pricing. This would be one way, and maybe Erki, you want to add something?
Nothing to add to that point. So maybe we can move on to the next one. Let me check if there's anything left.
Let's see if there are more questions coming in. All right, so we've pretty much answered all the questions that came up, if I can see this correctly. There are a couple that open quite a big field. I think that would be out of the range of what we can actually cover today, but we will get back to you after the seminar for sure. We see who placed these couple of questions, so we will definitely get back to you. Thank you very much for these. Thank you very much to everyone for placing those questions and for engaging. So all of the points that we have made here today can be summed up briefly by saying that while the 2022 peak may be over, the next peak season is just around the corner. And what we recommend is to prepare early. So you may be happy the stress is over now, but it can make sense to analyze the last peak now while it's still fresh in your mind, and determine how you can improve. The fact that you joined today's webinar shows your willingness to do so, which is great. Talk to a logistics provider if you are not happy, and let them help you evaluate what went wrong. and how to improve. And if you want a second opinion on your logistical setup, we at Warehousing One are more than happy to help. Feel free to scan this QR code and book an appointment with my dear colleague Dennis, who will then happily assist you. So thank you very much for your time. I truly appreciate it, and I hope that you found this webinar useful.
Thanks, Nina, for the insights. Sorry for the small inconvenience with the audio, and thanks for taking your time. See you guys.